I spent 7 years building what I thought was a solid marriage with Amanda. We had the house in the suburbs, decent jobs, and plans to start a family. Everything looked perfect from the outside, but I started noticing little things that did not add up. The way she smiled at her phone, how she suddenly cared about her appearance more than ever. Those late nights at work that kept getting later. Then came the night I came home early and found out why. Before I get into what happened that night, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop a comment below and hit that like button if you have ever felt that gut feeling that something was wrong. And subscribe, because what I did next, well, nobody saw it coming. Trust me, this is not your typical confrontation story. Looking back now, I realize the signs were there for at least 3 months before that Friday night. Amanda worked as a marketing manager at a tech firm downtown, and her job had always been demanding. But something shifted around late spring. She started coming home at 9 or 10 at night instead of her usual 6:30. At first, I believed her when she said they were launching a new product and everyone was pulling extra hours. I wanted to believe her. Then there were the other changes. Amanda had always been naturally beautiful, but she never fussed much about her appearance. Suddenly, she was getting up an hour earlier to do her makeup perfectly. She bought new clothes without telling me expensive stuff that she would wear to the office. Her hair, which she usually just pulled back in a ponytail, was now styled differently every week. She joined a gym and went religiously every morning before work. I tried to be supportive. I told myself she was just taking better care of herself, maybe going through some kind of personal growth phase. But then there was the phone. Amanda had always been casual about her phone, leaving it on the counter, never caring if I saw her screen. Now it was glued to her hand. She took it everywhere, even to the bathroom. She would be sitting next to me on the couch, and I would hear it buzz, and she would check it and smile, this little secretive smile. When I asked who was texting, she would say it was just work stuff or a friend from college. Our intimate life disappeared completely. She was always too tired, too stressed, too something. We went from being close to being roommates who barely touched. When I tried to talk to her about it, she would get defensive and say I was being needy. She made me feel like I was the problem. That Friday in early August, I was supposed to be in a meeting until 8 o'clock that night. It was a quarterly review with our regional managers, the kind of thing that dragged on forever. But our VP got food poisoning at lunch and canceled the whole thing at 5:30. I texted Amanda to let her know I would be home early, but she did not respond. That was not unusual lately. I got home around 6:15. Amanda's car was in the garage, which surprised me because she had said she would be working late. The house was quiet when I walked in. I called out her name. No answer. Then I heard it. Laughter. Coming from upstairs. A man's voice mixed with hers. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I walked up the stairs slowly, each step feeling like it took forever. Our bedroom door was not fully closed, just pushed mostly shut. Through the gap, I could see our bed. Amanda was there with a man I had never seen before. Their clothes were scattered across the floor I had vacuumed just that morning. The scene was so cliché, it almost felt unreal, like I was watching a bad movie instead of my actual life falling apart. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, though it felt like hours. I waited for rage to hit me, for the urge to burst in there and start screaming. But instead, this cold clarity washed over me. I did not want to confront them. I did not want to hear excuses or apologies or see Amanda cry and beg. I just wanted to be anywhere but there. I walked back downstairs as quietly as I had come up, got in my car, drove to a bar about 10 miles away called Murphy's. I sat in a corner booth and ordered a whiskey I barely touched. The bartender must have thought I was weird, just sitting there staring at nothing. But my mind was racing. 7 years. We had been together for 7 years. 3 years dating, 4 years married. I thought about our wedding day, how beautiful she looked, how happy I felt. I thought about the house we bought together, how we spent weekends painting rooms and planting flowers in the yard. I thought about all the times she had looked me in the eye and said she loved me. All of it felt like lies now. The question that kept circling in my head was, how long had this been going on? Those late nights at work, the gym memberships, the new clothes, the phone attached to her hand. It all made sense now. But for how long? Weeks, months. The not knowing felt worse than what I had seen. I sat in that bar until closing time at 2 in the morning. By then, the shock had worn off, and something else had taken its place. Not anger exactly. More like determination. I did not want to be the guy who gets cheated on and then spends months in a messy divorce battle, fighting over furniture, and listening to her family tell me I should forgive her. I did not want to give her the chance to manipulate me or make me feel guilty or convince me it was somehow my fault. I wanted to disappear. Completely. Permanently. No confrontation, no discussion, no second chances. Just gone. I checked into a Holiday Inn that night and barely slept. By 6 o'clock Saturday morning, I was up and making calls. The first one was to Kyle, a friend from college who had become a divorce attorney. We had stayed close over the years, and I knew I could trust him. I told him everything. Kyle listened without interrupting, then said exactly what I needed to hear. You need evidence and you need to protect your assets. Do not do anything emotional. We are going to handle this the smart way. By Monday morning, I had hired a private investigator named Frank. He was an older guy, ex-cop, very professional. I gave him all the details I could, Amanda's schedule, her car, the address of her office. Frank said he would have preliminary results within a week. That week was the strangest of my life. I went back to the house and acted completely normal. Amanda had no idea I had come home early that Friday. She thought I had been at my meeting until late and then gone out with colleagues like I sometimes did. When I walked in Saturday afternoon, she was on the couch watching television, acting like everything was fine. I smiled, kissed her on the forehead, and asked how her Friday night was. She said she had worked late and then came home and went to bed. The lie rolled off her tongue so easily. I kept up the act for 2 weeks. It was exhausting. Every morning I would wake up next to someone I now knew was betraying me, and I would have to pretend everything was normal. She would kiss me goodbye and say she loved me, and I would say it back, and the words felt like ash in my mouth. Some nights, she would claim she was working late, and I would know exactly what she was really doing, but I smiled and said, okay, and told her not to work too hard. During those 2 weeks, I was busy behind the scenes. I opened a new bank account at a different bank and started moving money from our joint account to my personal one. Not all of it, just my half. I did it in small transfers, so it would not look suspicious. I gathered all my important documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport, tax returns. I packed them in a box and took them to Kyle's office for safekeeping. I also started moving my personal items out of the house bit by bit. Clothes books, my grandfather's watch, photos of my family. Things that mattered to me. I would take a bag or two at a time and store them in my car trunk, then transfer them to a storage unit I rented across town. Amanda never noticed. She was too distracted by whatever was happening in her secret life. I also found an apartment, a small one-bedroom place in a town called Riverside, about 30 miles away. Far enough that I would not accidentally run into anyone we knew, but close enough to my job that the commute was manageable. I signed a lease starting September 1st. The landlord thought it was weird that I wanted to move in so fast, but I paid 3 months upfront in cash, and he stopped asking questions. Frank, the investigator, called me on the 10th day. I have got what you need, he said. We met at a diner, and he slid a manila envelope across the table to me. Inside were photos. Amanda and a man walking into a hotel. The same man from that Friday night? More photos of them in a parking garage kissing next to his car. Time-stamped receipts from the hotel spanning back 6 months. Text message records that Frank had somehow obtained. The man's name was Derek Paulson. He was Amanda's boss at the tech firm. 6 months. She had been cheating on me for half a year with her boss. The betrayal felt even deeper knowing it had been going on that long right under my nose while I worried about her working too hard and tried to be a supportive husband. Frank also gave me printed screenshots of their text messages. I did not read most of them. I did not need to torture myself with the details. But I saw enough to know this was not just physical. They talked about having a future together. About how Amanda wished she could leave me, but was scared. About how Derek was going to leave his wife too. It was a whole fantasy life they had built. Kyle reviewed everything and nodded. This is perfect. With this evidence, you will have a very clean divorce. She will not be able to claim much of anything. Adultery changes everything, especially with it being her boss. You are in a strong position. I asked Kyle to prepare all the paperwork, divorce petition, asset division, everything. I wanted it ready to go. On the morning of Monday, August 28th, I woke up before Amanda. She was still asleep, looking peaceful and innocent. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I got dressed quietly, grabbed my keys, and walked out. I had already taken the day off from work. I had called my boss the previous Friday and said I had a family emergency and needed a few personal days. He told me to take whatever time I needed. I drove to the house one last time while Amanda was at work. I had a small moving truck rented. I loaded up the last of my things, my desk, my television, some furniture that was mine from before the marriage. It took about 3 hours. When I was done, I walked through the empty spaces where my stuff had been and felt nothing. This place was not home anymore. Maybe it never really had been. I left the envelope on the kitchen table. Inside was the divorce petition, signed and ready to file. A copy of all the evidence. Frank had gathered photos, hotel receipts, text messages, and a single piece of paper with one sentence written on it. I know everything. Do not contact me. My lawyer will reach out. I took off my wedding ring and placed it on top of the envelope. Then I walked out, locked the door, and dropped my house key in the mailbox. I blocked Amanda's number on my phone, blocked her on every social media platform, changed my email password, and set up filters so anything from her address would go straight to trash. I did not want to hear from her. Not an apology, not an explanation. Nothing. She had made her choices, and now I was making mine. By that evening, I was in my new apartment in Riverside, unpacking boxes and trying to figure out what my new life looked like. According to Kyle, Amanda got home around 6:30 that Monday evening and found everything I left. She immediately tried calling me. When she realized I had blocked her, she started texting from other numbers' friends' phones, even using apps to generate temporary numbers. Kyle showed me some of the messages. They ranged from panicked apologies to angry accusations to desperate pleas. I did not read them. I told Kyle to handle all communication. She tried coming to my office the next day. I had already talked to our building security and my boss. I explained the situation, showed them the restraining order paperwork Kyle was filing, and asked them not to let her in. When Amanda showed up that Tuesday morning, security stopped her at the front desk. She caused a scene, crying and demanding to see me. They had to escort her out. My coworkers heard about it, but I did not care. The truth was on my side. She went to my parents' house that same evening. My mom and dad had always liked Amanda, but when I told them what happened and showed them the evidence, their feelings changed instantly. My dad answered the door when she showed up. He told her very firmly to leave and never come back. My mom, who had been like a second mother to Amanda, would not even come to the door. For about a week, Amanda tried everything to reach me. She sent emails that bounced back. She sent letters to my office that I returned unopened. She even tried to friend request me from a fake social media account, but I recognized her writing style in the profile description. I blocked it immediately. I think that is when she finally realized I was serious, that I was not going to have some big dramatic confrontation where she could cry and apologize and try to win me back. I was just gone, erased from her life like I had never existed. And there was nothing she could do about it. But then, Her family got involved. It started 2 weeks after I left. I was walking to my car after work on a Thursday evening when I heard someone call my name. I turned around and saw Roger, Amanda's father, walking toward me across the parking lot. He was a big guy, around 6'3", used to work construction before he retired. Next to him was Diane, Amanda's mother, a small woman who looked like she had been crying. I kept my face neutral and did not move toward them. They came right up to me close enough that I could smell the coffee on Roger's breath. "We need to talk," Roger said. His voice was loud, aggressive. A few people in the parking lot turned to look. "No, we do not," I said calmly. "If you have something to say, contact my attorney." "You cannot just abandon your wife like this," Roger said, his face getting red. "You made vows, for better or worse. You do not just walk away when things get hard." I almost laughed at that. Things got hard. Is that what you call your daughter sleeping with her boss for 6 months? Diane started crying harder. "She made a mistake. She is so sorry. You are destroying our family." "I am not destroying anything," I said. "Amanda did that all by herself." Roger stepped closer, trying to intimidate me with his size. "You are acting like a child. Running away, hiding, blocking her. Be a man and face this like an adult." I looked him right in the eye. "I am being an adult. Adults have boundaries. Adults do not tolerate betrayal. Adults walk away from situations that are toxic. What you want me to do is be a doormat, and that is not going to happen." "You will regret this," Roger said, his voice low and threatening. "We will make sure you lose everything in court. We will drag you through hell." I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. I'd been recording since they first approached me. "You just threatened me," I said clearly. "That is on record now. If you or anyone in your family contacts me again, I will file for a restraining order. Talk to my lawyer. His name is Kyle Mitchell. Now get away from my car." I walked past them, got in my car, and drove away. My hands were shaking, but I felt oddly triumphant. They thought they could bully me into coming back. They had no idea who they were dealing with. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Amanda's family launched what I can only describe as a harassment campaign. Roger called my office multiple times trying to talk to my boss, saying I was an unreliable employee who was abandoning my responsibilities. My boss, thank God, knew the truth and told Roger to stop calling, or he would contact the police. They made vague posts on social media about cruel people who abandoned their families. They never mentioned my name directly, but it was obvious who they were talking about. Diane sent a long email to several of my relatives, people she was friends with, on social media, telling a twisted version of the story where I was the villain who left Amanda for no reason. The worst was Justin, Amanda's younger brother. He was 25, worked as a personal trainer, and thought he was tougher than he actually was. He somehow found out where I lived. One night around 11 o'clock, there was loud pounding on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Justin standing there looking angry. "Open up, Ned. We need to talk," he shouted. I did not open the door. Instead, I called the police. I told them someone was harassing me at my home and I felt threatened. They sent a patrol car. By the time the officers arrived, Justin was still there sitting in the hallway outside my door. The police talked to him, got his information, and told him to leave. They filed a report for me. Kyle was pleased when I told him about all of this. "They are making this easy for you," he said. "Every time they harass you, it strengthens your case. Keep documenting everything." I did. I kept a detailed log of every call, every social media post, every incident. I saved emails and text messages from numbers I did not recognize that I suspected were from them. I kept the police report from Justin's visit. The final straw came in late September. Roger and Justin showed up at my office together. Security stopped them at the entrance, but they caused a huge scene in the lobby. Roger was shouting about how I was a coward and a disgrace. Justin was filming on his phone, probably planning to post it online. Other people in the building were staring. It was humiliating, even though I was not even there to see it. My boss called me at home and told me what happened and that he had called the police. That afternoon, I had Kyle file for a restraining order against Roger, Diane, Justin, and Amanda. All of them. Kyle presented the court with documentation of everything, the threatening encounter in the parking lot, the harassment calls, the social media posts, Justin showing up at my apartment, and the scene at my office. The judge granted a temporary restraining order immediately and scheduled a hearing for a permanent one. At the hearing 2 weeks later, Amanda's whole family showed up. It was the first time I had seen Amanda since I left. She looked terrible, thinner dark circles under her eyes, her hair not styled the way it used to be. Part of me felt bad. But then I remembered the photos Frank had shown me. The text messages, the 6 months of lies, and the feeling disappeared. The judge listened to both sides. Roger tried to claim they were just concerned family members trying to help save a marriage. Kyle presented all the evidence of harassment, including the recording of Roger threatening me in the parking lot. The judge was not impressed with their excuses. The permanent restraining order was granted. All 4 of them had to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home and my workplace. If they violated it, they would face criminal charges. As we left the courtroom, I saw Amanda watching me. She looked like she wanted to say something, but her lawyer pulled her away. That was the last time I saw her in person. The divorce was finalized in November. Thanks to the evidence of adultery, the settlement was heavily in my favor. I kept almost all of our savings, the car I had been driving, and my personal property. Amanda got the house, but she had to refinance it in her name only and pay me out for half its value. She also had to pay a portion of my legal fees. Kyle called me the day the papers were finalized. "It is done. You are officially a free man." I should have felt happy, relieved, something, but mostly I just felt empty. The months after the divorce were strange. I had my freedom, my money, my own place. I had won in every sense that mattered. But winning did not feel the way I thought it would. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects and staying late at the office. It was easier than going home to an empty apartment and thinking about how my life had imploded. My coworkers were supportive, but distant. Nobody really knew what to say to me. I did not blame them. Around December, my boss pulled me aside and suggested I take some time off. "You have been through a lot," he said. "You have more than enough vacation days saved up. Maybe use some of them." I realized he was right. I had been running on empty for months, so I took 2 weeks off and did not have a single plan for what to do with the time. The first few days, I just slept. Long, deep sleeps that I had not had since before everything happened. When I finally felt rested, I started thinking about what I actually wanted to do with my life now. I joined a gym not to impress anyone or change my appearance, but because I needed an outlet for all the emotions I had been suppressing. I started going to therapy too. My therapist, a woman named Dr. Sarah Lynn, helped me work through the anger and betrayal I had been carrying. She never judged me for how I handled things. She just listened and helped me process. "You did what you needed to do to protect yourself," she told me in one session. "That is not running away. That is self-preservation." I reconnected with old friends I had lost touch with during my marriage. Guys from college, former coworkers, people I had not seen in years. We would meet for drinks or go to a game, and it felt good to just be around people who knew me before everything went wrong. In January, I took a solo trip to Colorado. I had always wanted to go skiing, but Amanda hated the cold, so we never went. I spent a week in the mountains learning to ski, reading books by the fireplace in my cabin, and just existing without any pressure or expectations. It was the first time in a long time that I felt at peace. Through Kyle, I heard occasional updates about Amanda. She lost her job at the tech firm. Apparently, The company did not appreciate the scandal of a manager having an affair with his employee, so both Amanda and Derek were let go. Derek went back to his wife and tried to fix his marriage. Amanda moved in with her parents for a while because she could not afford the house payment alone. She eventually sold the house at a loss and moved to a different city. I did not feel glad about any of that. I did not feel anything really. It was like hearing about a stranger's misfortunes. Her life was not my concern anymore. By the time spring came around, I realized something important. I had spent so long thinking about what had been taken from me that I forgot to think about what I had gained. I gained self-respect. I gained the ability to set boundaries and stick to them. I gained freedom from a relationship that was built on lies, and I gained the knowledge that I could survive something that felt unsurvivable. I was not the same person I was a year ago. That person had been willing to overlook things, to convince himself everything was fine, to prioritize keeping the peace over his own happiness. The person I was now understood that some things are not worth fighting for. Some battles are won by walking away. Dr. Lin asked me in one of our last sessions if I regretted how I handled everything. Do you wish you had confronted her, given her a chance to explain? I thought about it for a long time before answering. No, because nothing she could have said would have changed what she did. An explanation is not the same as an excuse. And I did not owe her the opportunity to manipulate me or make me feel guilty. I owed myself peace, and the only way to get that was to cut her out completely. She nodded. That takes a lot of strength. Maybe it did, or maybe it was just survival instinct. Either way, I was here. I was okay, and that was more than enough. I thought about the night I found her with Derek, how I stood in that doorway, frozen, watching my life fall apart. I remembered thinking that I wanted to disappear, and I did. I vanished from her life so completely that it was like I never existed. No screaming matches, no bitter arguments about who was right or wrong, no months of false reconciliation, followed by more betrayal. Just a clean cut. One day I was there, and the next I was gone. Some people might call that cold. They might say I should have given her a chance, that everyone makes mistakes, that marriage is supposed to be about forgiveness. But those people did not see the 6 months of text messages. They did not see the hotel receipts. They did not hear her lie to my face every single day while she was building a whole separate life with someone else. I learned that forgiveness does not mean you have to let someone stay in your life. You can forgive someone and still never speak to them again. You can wish them well from a distance and still protect yourself from ever being hurt by them again. That is not cruelty. That is wisdom. As I sit here now, more than a year after everything happened, I am genuinely happy. Not in the way I thought I would be when I was married, with the house and the plans and the future we talked about, but in a quieter, more real way. I wake up every day and do not have to wonder if I am being lied to. I spend time with people who actually value me. I make decisions based on what I want, not what keeps someone else happy. I am free. Sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all. It is just moving forward and never looking back. And you know what? I have never felt more free. So, let me ask you something. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved because staying would have destroyed you? How did you handle it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you at all, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope wherever you are in your journey, you find the strength to choose yourself. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, you deserve people in your life who choose you every single day. Until next time.